They buried him on a rainy Tuesday. The sky cracked open like it was morning too, and the preacher's words drowned in the wind. I hadn't set foot on that land in years, not since I left for the city with nothing but a duffel bag and the need to forget. But now I was back. He left me the farm. No will reading, no drama, just a note, written in his unshakable hand. Take care of the land. Follow the rules. Don't forget the third one. I thought it was just one of his old sayings, some cryptic wisdom passed down like rusted tools and old barn stories. I laughed when I read it. The drive out there was longer than I remembered. The road twisting in ways that didn't match the maps. No signal, no towns nearby. Just endless fields, dried out from the summer and whispering with wind that felt colder than it should. The house hadn't changed, though it looked more like a skeleton now, weather-beaten wood, windows like cataracts. The porch sagging like it knew something I didn't. The keys were still under the stone owl on the step. The door groaned when I opened it, the kind of sound that echoes too long in an empty place. And the second I stepped inside, I felt it. The air was wrong. Heavy. Listening. Like the house was holding its breath. I should have left that first night, but I didn't. I lit the fireplace, unpacked my bag, and opened the envelope he left on the kitchen table. Inside were the instructions. 7 of them, handwritten. The last one read, "If you hear the bell, do not look out the window." I haven't told anyone this before. Not really. I mean, there were times I came close, like when a friend asked why I moved back into town so suddenly, or when I flinched at the sound of a church bell, but I always stopped myself. It's not the kind of thing you can drop into casual conversation. People look at you different after. They start watching you like they're waiting for you to crack. Or worse, they try to follow your story, go out there and see for themselves. So I'm telling you, you seem like someone who's seen strange things to someone who wouldn't laugh if I said that a place can remember. That a house, a field, even the wind can carry, ... Something that watches. Something that waits. Maybe that's why I found your channel, or whatever this is. I haven't been sleeping much. I stay up late scrolling through videos with flickering flashlight thumbnails and distorted audio stories about haunted woods, creepy cabins with no signal, people who hear breathing behind locked doors. And for once, I didn't feel crazy, just ... not alone. That's what got me to finally sit down and record this. Because I need someone to listen. I need you to understand that it wasn't just grief, or stress, or my imagination playing tricks on me. Something was on that land, something that had been there long before my father ever built the farmhouse, or drew up those instructions, and it wanted me to stay. I've had sleepless nights for weeks now. I still hear its soft thumps on the floorboards, long after I've locked up my new apartment. Sometimes I dream I'm back in that kitchen, the envelope still unopened on the table, the bell about to ring. I wake up before it does, but the sound lingers. A low chime, I swear, echoes through my walls. My father was a strange man, and growing up on that farm never felt quite normal, but I chalked it up to rural isolation. We were miles from the nearest neighbor, with thick woods on 3 sides, and wheat fields that stretched to the horizon. He never let me near the tree line, never let me sleep with the windows open. When I asked him why, he'd just say, "Because it's safer this way." After I left for college, I didn't look back. He didn't call, didn't visit, and I didn't either, not even when my mom passed. But I never forgot the way his eyes looked on those nights when the wind carried. Something sharp when he'd double-lock the doors and sit by the window, shotgun across his lap, listening. The weird thing is, when I moved back after the funeral, it wasn't just the house that felt off. The land itself felt ... wrong. Like the air was thicker. The silence too complete. I didn't see any animals, not a single bird or rabbit the entire week. No signal, of course. Not that it mattered. I didn't want distractions. I just wanted to clean things up, sell the place, and move on. but then I found the instructions. 7 rules. All handwritten in his exacting block print. No title, no explanation, just never go into the woods. No matter what you hear, keep all windows shut after sundown. Do not light the barn lantern after midnight. Bury any dead animal you find. Do not burn it. Cover all mirrors in the house after dark. Do not answer if someone knocks after 1:13 a.m. If you hear the bell, do not look out the window. I laughed when I first read them. Thought it was just his final way of screwing with me. But then, little things started happening. The clocks would stop for exactly 13 minutes at a time. My phone, even offline, would light up at 1:13 a.m. No messages, just a blank screen. I started hearing soft thuds from the attic, but when I'd go up there, it was always empty. No mice, no signs of anything living. And then there were the whispers. Faint, like someone talking just outside the window. Always right after the sun dipped below the tree line. It sounded like my father's voice, but stretched, tired, and saying things I couldn't quite catch. The worst part, I started responding, not out loud, but in my head like it knew how to reach me where I was weakest. I should have left. I knew it wasn't safe. But the more time I spent there, the harder it became to leave. Like the land itself was tugging at something deep inside me, familiar, ancestral. I started dreaming about the house before it was built, empty fields, bonfires in the woods, strange figures watching from the edge of the trees. I'd wake up, soaked in sweat, and the bell would ring. That bell, I never found it, never saw it, but I heard it every night. At the same time, a deep, metallic chime that vibrated in my teeth, and every time it rang, I wanted no. I needed to look out the window, but I didn't. Not at first. Please, promise me something. Don't try to find it. Don't look for the farm. It's not on any map. The road to it shifts. It's not supposed to be found unless it wants to be. I know how this all sounds. Like a grief-stricken son losing his grip. But if you've ever felt watched in an empty room, if you've ever heard creepy noises in a place where there should be none, then you know some places to remember, and some things, never leave. The farmhouse sits at the end of a long dirt road, so overgrown now that you could drive past the turn 100 times and never see it. The trees press in tight on either side like they're trying to hide the way forward, and once you take that turn, there's no cell signal, no bars, not even a faint, roaming indicator. Just the crunch of gravel beneath your tires and the steady sense that the deeper you go, the further you're leaving the real world behind. The house itself is older than it should be. My father built it in the 80s, but the bones of the place feel much older, like it was copied from some memory that predates him. Weather-worn wood slats, blackened around the base like fire once licked up the walls, but didn't consume it. The porch groans even when no one is standing on it, and the windows, they don't reflect right. You'll catch your own face, but it's always just a little off, like your eyes are looking somewhere else, somewhere behind you. Out back, there's a barn that leans slightly to the left, and a shed so choked with vines that it took me a full hour just to pry the door open. I never went inside. Something about it made my skin prickle. The air around it was always colder, even at noon. The land surrounding the house is massive fields, left to rot and turn wild, encircled by dense woods that stretch so far you'd lose daylight before you reached the end. When I was a kid, my father told me the forest was older than sin. I never understood what that meant, but I remembered it the first time I stood on the back porch after his funeral and heard the trees rustle with no wind. It was subtle, like breathing deep, long exhalations that seemed to rise and fall in rhythm. I stayed in the house for the first few nights. Just me, the silence, and the strange instructions he left behind. They were still on the kitchen table when I arrived, written in ink that hadn't faded despite the paper yellowing around the edges. I found myself reading them over and over, as if repetition would somehow make them make sense. I couldn't shake the feeling that the rules weren't just for protection, they were a form of communication, like warnings passed down from one sentinel to the next. The first few days passed quietly enough. I cleaned, took stock of what needed to be fixed, tried to ignore the strange way the grandfather clock in the hallway would stop at exactly 2:37 p.m. each afternoon, no matter how many times I rewound it. I dismissed it at first, chalked it up to dust, old gears, or just a house being a house. But then I noticed the silence. It would happen in bursts, maybe 15 or 20 minutes, where the world outside just paused. No birds, no insects, no creaking of wood or rustle of leaves. And when that silence hit, the house felt tighter, smaller, like something was pressing in from all sides. The walls seemed closer, shadows stretched longer, the air grew thick enough to chew. One morning I woke up to find all the picture frames turned face down. Every single one, even the ones on high shelves or above doorways. I hadn't touched them, I was sure of it. I hadn't even looked at most of them since I got there. But there they were, faces hidden, glass cracked on a few, like someone had tapped hard on the center with a finger. I tried to ignore the growing list of strange occurrences. The mirror in the upstairs hall that always seemed a degree too cold when I walked past. The way my reflection sometimes lingered half a second longer than it should have. The soft, dry scrape of footsteps across the porch at night bear. Deliberate, dragging. I wanted to believe it was all in my head. That I was tired, grieving, jumpy from being alone in a place I hadn't been in years. But then I met the old man at the gas station. I had driven into town to get supplies, just a few essentials. Batteries, canned food, a new padlock for the barn door. It's a tiny place, 2 pumps, a cashier who doesn't look up when you walk in, and shelves stocked like the apocalypse already happened. I asked the man behind the counter if he remembered my father. His face went still. "Your Harold's boy?" he asked slowly, like he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. I nodded. He stared at me a long time. Then, without saying another word, he reached under the counter and slid a small wooden charm toward me. It was carved with a symbol I didn't recognize, something circular, with jagged edges radiating outward like thorns. He told me to hang it on the front door, said it wouldn't stop anything, but it might slow it down. When I asked what he meant, he just said, "Your daddy stayed put for a reason. You'd be wise to do the same." Then he turned his back and wouldn't speak another word. On the drive back, I noticed something strange. The road seemed longer, like the trees had shifted while I was gone. There were no signs, no familiar bends, just trees. Endless trees, and that same creeping sense of being watched. The charm went up that night. I didn't believe it would help, but I was desperate enough to try anything. I was already hearing strange tapping from inside the walls, too rhythmic to be mice, too coordinated to be random. That same evening, I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror upstairs. Not a figure exactly, but a shape tall, almost skeletal, with limbs that bent the wrong way. It was only for a second, but when I blinked, it was gone, and my reflection stared straight ahead, even though I'd turned my head to the side. I covered the mirror with a sheet, just like the instructions said. Each day, I found more oddities. Feathers on the doorstep, muddy footprints that led from the back door to the base of the stairs and nowhere else. And always, that silence, growing longer, heavier, more deliberate. The forest felt alive with things I couldn't see, and the farmhouse, my father's farmhouse, felt less and less like a home, and more like a cage. One night, while I was sitting on the porch, I heard something out in the woods. It wasn't an animal. It sounded like ... a bell. A single chime, low and distant, but perfectly clear. I froze. The hair on my arms stood on end, and somewhere deep inside, I remembered the last line of my father's instructions. "If you hear the bell, do not look out the window." but I wasn't at a window. I was outside. It started with a sound, one I couldn't place, but one I recognized in my bones. A knock, 3 soft taps, coming from somewhere inside the farmhouse. It was around 2 a.m. I remember because I'd been lying awake for hours, staring at the ceiling fan and listening to the night try to convince me I was still alone. The knock didn't come from the front door. It didn't come from the back either. It sounded closer, like it had come from inside the walls. I sat up, my mouth dry, my skin cold, despite the humid August air. I didn't move right away. I just listened. Nothing followed. No footsteps, no voices, no repeat of the sound. Just that dense, crawling silence that lives deep in the woods. I eventually chalked it up to the house settling, or maybe a raccoon getting bold, and tried to sleep. IDN, single quotes. The next night, the knock came again. Same time, same pattern. 3 slow taps, but this time, it came from the floor beneath my bed. I scrambled up, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my eardrums. The boards were cold under my feet. I crouched and pressed my ear to the floor, holding my breath. I could have sworn I heard something faint, a scraping, a sigh. But when I yanked the floorboard loose with the crowbar I kept nearby, there was nothing underneath but dirt and cold air. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I found the front door wide open, unlocked. I know I locked it. I double-check everything before I sleep. Part of the routine my father hammered into me. Lock the doors. Close every window. Turn off the porch light. No light outside, he warned. They liked the light. I thought maybe I was losing it. Maybe the grief and stress were turning my memory against me. But things kept happening. One night, I found the rocking chair in the living room, facing the wall, creaking gently, even though all the windows were closed. Another morning, all the canned goods from the pantry were stacked pyramid style in the center of the kitchen, labels turned in. It was like the house was responding to me, testing me. Then came the dreams. I started seeing my father in them, not the way I remembered him, but paler, thin, his eyes clouded over. In the dreams, he'd be standing just outside the barn, motionless, whispering something I could never quite hear. When I tried to get closer, the sky would darken, and the earth would tilt, sending me falling backwards into an endless hole. I'd always wake up before I hit the bottom. Each morning, I was more tired than the last. I stopped shaving, stopped cooking. I just sat on the porch most days, staring out at the cornfields as they waved back and forth in that unnatural breeze. It wasn't normal wind, I noticed that early on. The corn would sway even when the air was completely still, like it was breathing. On the 5th night, I made the mistake of breaking the routine. I left the upstairs hallway light on, just one bulb. I was too scared to sleep in total darkness. But around 1:30 a.m., the bulb exploded. Not just a pop, glass everywhere. And then I heard footsteps on the stairs. I froze, blankets clutched around me, like they'd somehow shield me. The steps were deliberate, slow, each one heavier than the last, the wood groaning as something or someone made their way up. But when I worked up the courage to peek, the stairs were empty, except the 4th step was wet, like something had been dripping. The next morning, I found muddy footprints across the living room rug. Bare feet, not mine, too long. The toes were stretched, like they didn't belong to a human foot at all. I stopped sleeping entirely after that. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's pale face staring up from under the floorboards. Sometimes I'd hear him whisper my name from the walls. Once, I caught a glimpse of something in the bathroom mirror, just behind my shoulder. Too tall, not shaped right. But when I spun around, there was nothing there, only steam. One night, the wind howled so hard, I thought the roof might come off. I went to the barn, hoping for shelter, but when I opened the door, I found every tool nailed to the walls, upside down. My father's old journal was on the floor, wide open, but the pages had been scrawled over in red ink. One phrase repeated dozens of times: "Don't feed them." I didn't understand. Feed who? Then I noticed. The animals. The chickens stopped clucking. The cows stopped mooing. They'd just stand there, still as statues, facing one direction, toward the woods. No matter how I tried to guide them, they'd turn back again. Something had their attention, something waiting just past the tree line, and the whispers weren't in my head anymore. I could hear them clearly, like a distant radio signal humming through the floor. They said things I didn't understand, names I'd never heard before, numbers, sometimes just a long, low moan that vibrated through the walls and into my bones. I didn't know how much longer I could take it, but something told me, ... I hadn't even seen the worst of it yet. It was the smell that led me to the truth. Not the sour rot of decay, but something older, earthier. Damp soil mixed with candle wax and rusted metal. I'd smelled it before in the barn, usually strongest beneath the floorboards, but only recently had it begun to seep up through the cracks in the living room. One morning, after another night of dragging sounds beneath the floor, I moved the heavy rug aside and stared at the warped wood. There was a ring of darkness around one of the planks, like oil stains forming a circle. I dug my fingers into the seam and pried it up. Beneath it was dirt, cold, black, and packed down hard. I kept pulling more planks until I uncovered a recess, shallow, maybe 3 feet deep, filled with bundled cloth, broken wood, and something that looked like bones. Human-sized bones. But the most chilling thing wasn't the grave, it was the book. A worn leather journal bound in twine, tucked between 2 stones at the very bottom, as if it had been left there on purpose. I lifted it with shaking hands and opened the cover. My father's name was on the first page, written in ink that looked fresher than it had any right to be. Below it, in smaller letters, was a warning. If you find this, it's too late to leave, but you may still survive. The entries were sporadic, frantic. Some were dated years ago, others just months before his death. He wrote of them, without ever saying who they were, only referring to the ones below, or the watchers. According to him, the land wasn't inherited, it was chosen. Our family doesn't own this farm, he wrote. We keep it sealed. The soil is a lock, and the rituals are the key. That's when the strange instructions he gave me began to make sense. The salt lines along the thresholds, the carved symbols in the chicken coop, the fact that he never let the cows graze past a certain point in the backfield, even though it was some of the most fertile land on the property. He described the opening, an event that happened every generation. The earth grows thin, he said. The barrier between worlds stretches. You'll hear voices underfoot. You'll dream of doors that shouldn't exist. You must do as I did, he wrote, or they'll come through for real. And once here, they never go back. There was one entry near the end, written shakily, as if his hands had stopped cooperating. He mentioned something called the mid-soil hour. Midnight, but not by the clock. He said you'd feel it in your blood. A heaviness, a ringing in the ears. A moment where the entire house goes silent, even the wind. That's when they're closest, he warned. That's when the sacrifices matter most. I wanted to stop reading. My hands wanted to throw the book into the fire, but something compelled me. A voice in the back of my head that wasn't my own, whispering in a tone I didn't recognize. Keep going, it said. You need to understand. The next night, I set up cameras. I placed one in the barn, one in the hallway, and another in the root cellar. I wanted proof. I wanted to believe this was all in my head, some elaborate grief-induced delusion. But when I played back the footage the next morning, I nearly dropped the laptop. The barn camera showed flickers, not glitches. Flickers, shapes moving past the lens so fast they didn't register fully, just impressions. A hand curling around, The doorframe eyes, two vertical slits glowing like coals, hovering in midair for a full 2 seconds before vanishing. In the hallway feed, I saw myself sleepwalking. Only I wasn't walking. I was crawling backwards. My body twisted in, an unnatural arch, dragging itself down the hall with my head limp to the side. But the worst was the cellar. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the frame shook, not from movement, from sound. A low hum vibrated through the audio channel, so deep it barely registered as noise, the kind of frequency that makes your bones ache. And then, a face, gray, wet, impossibly long. It pressed against the camera lens, upside down, like it had crawled along the ceiling. Its mouth didn't move, but the hum turned into words. I played it over and over, enhancing the audio. Blood is owed. You are late. After that night, I stopped recording. I didn't want to see more. I didn't want to know more. But the journal, it had more to tell me. Rituals I hadn't yet completed. Instructions I had ignored, like the one about the well. Don't let the moonlight touch the well, he wrote. Cover it with tarps before dusk, always. I hadn't. The tarp had blown off days ago, and I hadn't thought twice about it. The next morning, I walked out to the well. The stones were cracked, as if something had pushed outward from inside. The rope hung loose, frayed at the end. I peered over the edge and saw nothing but darkness. But when I lowered my phone flashlight in, the light didn't reflect back. It was swallowed, eaten. That night, the noises in the walls became voices, not whispers, conversations. I heard my name repeated in a child's voice. I heard the laughter of someone who sounded like my mother, though she'd been dead for a decade. The journal said they use your memories against you, that they aren't real, but they'll feel real enough. Don't let them in, it warned. They can't take you unless you believe they're already inside. I think I've already let them in. I told myself I could leave. That was the mantra. I held on to it like a life raft. No matter how twisted the days had become, no matter how strange the nights were, this wasn't a prison. It was just a place. My father's old farm, a set of coordinates on a map. I could get in a truck and drive away. That was the lie that kept me calm, until the moment I actually tried. I waited until morning. I figured that was smarter. Whatever was happening, whatever had crawled into the corners of this house, I didn't want to see it in the dark again. I packed quickly, threw everything I could into the truck bed, stuffed the journal into my backpack, and left the salt lines broken. I didn't care anymore. I wasn't coming back. The road out of the farm had always been simple. One long dirt path through the trees until you hit the county road. But that morning, as I drove, the trees felt ... wrong. I passed the old oak mine landmark and breathed out, thinking I was almost there. But then I passed it again, and again, the same branch broken at the same angle, the same initials carved in the bark. S-E-T-M-E-T. Like a loop in a video, I couldn't stop playing. I turned around, drove the other way, faster, more determined. But it didn't matter. No matter which direction I went, I always ended up back at that tree, back at the farm. The road was dissolving behind me, shrinking, fraying at the edges, until it wasn't a road at all, just damp forest floor and a sky that felt lower than it should have been. I stopped the truck and stepped out. The ground beneath my boots felt soft, not muddy, not mossy, soft like something alive, something breathing. The kind of softness that sinks if you stand still too long. I screamed into the woods, called for help, cried out apologies to my father, begged for release. But my voice just died in the air, swallowed by a silence that didn't echo. Not even the birds answered, not even the wind. When I got back to the house, and I swear to you, I don't remember turning the truck around. The front door was open, just swinging slowly, like it had been waiting. The inside of the house was darker than I remembered, and that smell, the one I'd been noticing all week, had deepened, thickened, damp earth and mold and something underneath. It's something sweet and rotting. The salt lines were gone, not disturbed, gone, cleaned like someone had carefully erased them. And in the hallway, at the far end, where the light didn't reach, I saw it, a figure, not fully there, not fully gone, the kind of thing you only see from the corner of your eye. But this time, it let me see it. Its arms were too long. Its posture was wrong. Head tilted downward like it was listening to the floor. It didn't rush me, didn't lunge, just raised one finger and pointed toward the basement door. That's when I broke. Not with fear, not exactly. I broke with understanding. A sick kind of peace settled into me. This wasn't about leaving. It never was. My father hadn't stayed here out of duty. He stayed because he knew there is no out, only in, only down. So I opened the basement door, and I went, step after step, deeper into the cold, beneath the farmhouse. I didn't flinch, didn't cry. My body moved like it had done it before, like I'd been rehearsing this descent my entire life. And when I reached the bottom, I found the altar. Stones set in a spiral. Dust and dried blood in patterns I didn't understand but instinctively recognized. The journal had mentioned offerings, sacrifices. Not always flesh, but sometimes. Identity, name, will, belonging. So I whispered my name into the spiral, just once, just loud enough for it to hear, and I felt it take something from me. It didn't hurt, not really. It was more like losing weight you didn't know you were carrying. A string pulled loose from the center of your chest, leaving you a little emptier but somehow steadier, like you'd finally done what was expected. I don't remember how long I stayed down there. Time bends in that place. Seconds stretch, hours fold, days vanish. But at some point, I knew it was over. The presence that had been watching waiting it faded into the walls. Or maybe it stepped inside me. I don't know. It's quiet now. Quiet in a way that makes the silence louder. When I came back upstairs, the house hadn't changed, but every clock had stopped at 3:12. All of them, as if time itself had held its breath and refused to exhale. I sat on the porch that night, watching the fields. The cows weren't grazing anymore. They were standing perfectly still, all facing the tree line, all listening, just like my father described. And in that moment, I understood why he never left. Not because he couldn't, but because something ancient had accepted him, and now, it's accepted me too. Asterisk, I haven't been able to sleep since the basement. Not really. I close my eyes, and I might drift for a while, but it's never rest, it's waiting. I feel it in my bones, now the way the house breathes. I hear the groan of the old wood even when I'm not there. I hear the cows crying out in their sleep, low and guttural, like something circling them in the dark. Some nights, I hear my father's voice. He's not speaking words, just humming that same tune he used to whistle when he was fixing fences or walking to the barn. I can't get it out of my head. It's not even a melody anymore. It's a warning that loops over and over again in the corners of my mind. I don't expect you to believe any of this. I wouldn't, if I hadn't lived it. But I need to tell someone, just one person. That's why I'm here, why I'm talking to you. You seemed like someone who's seen strange things too. Someone who doesn't sleep right anymore. Someone who doesn't jump when they hear tapping on the window because they're used to it now. So listen to me. Really listen. The farm isn't haunted. I need you to understand that. It's not a ghost story. It's older than that. Bigger. This thing, whatever it is, doesn't rattle chains or slam doors for fun. It doesn't want to scare you. It wants to be known. It wants your attention. And once it has that, it never lets go. I tried leaving again, a few times. I made it as far as the tree line once, but then I heard the humming again, my father's humming, and I realized I was walking in a circle I hadn't even noticed. My feet just kept finding the same path over and over, like I was following breadcrumbs I couldn't see. I think I'm part of the land now, not physically, not yet, but mentally, spiritually. Something in me has sunk its roots in, or maybe something from below has pulled me down to its level. Either way, I feel it. When I breathe, it breathes. When I think, it listens. It doesn't whisper anymore. It doesn't need to. You should have seen the way the floorboards shifted when I stepped back into the house after the basement. Not in protest, not in fear, but in recognition. Like it knew me now. Knew I was his son. Knew I'd finally read the journal and understood my place. Not heir, not owner, just vessel. You want to know what scares me the most? It's not the shadows, not the dreams. It's the fact that I don't want to leave anymore. That's what terrifies me, because I think that means it's working. If you ever come across that land, if someone tells you about an old farm upstate, no signal, good soil, lots of space, don't go. Don't even look at pictures. Don't try to find it. There are places that are meant to be forgotten, and that place, it's hungry for memory. It eats names. It chews through lineage like bark. And if, God forbid, you do go burn it, burn the house, burn the barn, salt the soil, and don't look back. Because once it knows your name, once you give it that small piece of who you are, there's no taking it back. Asterisk, have you ever had that feeling like something was watching you, even when you were alone? Maybe you were out in the woods, or maybe just lying in bed, staring at the ceiling while everything went quiet. Not normal quiet, wrong quiet. The kind where even your thoughts feel like they're echoing too loud. The kind where something is listening back. If you've ever felt that, I want to know. Comment below. Tell me your story. I read every single one, especially now that I don't sleep much. The nights are too long, and the air is too thick with things I can't unsee. Sometimes your stories help me feel less alone. Other times, they make me realize maybe this thing isn't just tied to the farm. Maybe it's spreading. So go ahead, share what happened to you. Did you hear knocking with no source? See a face in the reflection that wasn't yours? Did the woods fall silent just before something moved? Tell me, just one last thing. If you're about to listen to the next story, make sure the lights are low. Make sure the door is locked. And whatever you don't, listen to it alone, because that's when it hears you best.